What is anger? Step 1. Learn to recognize the many faces of anger. Tom, a slender man with loosened tie and slightly tousled hair, sat across from Dr. Carter explaining his reason for seeking counseling. I don't like thinking of myself as an angry man, but I don't know any better way to describe it. I'm 44 years old, and you would think age could mellow me, but I'm constantly frustrated and irritated. My wife left me 2 years ago because she said I was boring. I'm an engineer, so maybe I do relate more easily to computers than people. But honestly, I was never bad to her. I'm not argumentative, and I'm always reliable in my responsibilities. She had little to worry about because I took good care of her financially and otherwise. But apparently, I just wasn't good enough. I'll never understand why she couldn't love me. Tom's fists tightened as he spoke. What's worse, the divorce has thrown a wrench into my relationship with my 2 children. Excuse me. Gina is in her first year of college, so she's only in town during special holidays. Then her time has to be split between our 2 residences. Plus, she has several close friends in the area. I feel like I have to settle for her leftover time. Scott is in junior high school, so he's still around, but our visits are limited mostly to weekends, and you know how a 17-year-old kid likes to get out. He doesn't want to just sit in Dad's dreary apartment, and I can't blame him. As Tom spoke, Dr. Carter was absorbing more than just the facts. He was also hearing the pain in Tom's voice. Reflecting aloud, he responded, "It's very easy to convince yourself that life has dealt you an unfair blow. I'm sure you're obsessed about how you don't deserve all this. No wonder you say you're an angry man." "That's just it, Dr. Carter. I've never really thought of myself as being angry. At least, not until now. I guess I've been surprised to know an emotion like this could get such a grip on me." Tom should not have been so surprised. Anger is an emotion that is common to every person. Because we are imperfect people in an imperfect world, we are guaranteed to regularly encounter this emotion. When most people think of anger, they picture a person in rage. They have images of slamming doors, shouting, and intimidating communication. Certainly, this is a part of the angry response, but anger is not that one-dimensional. It is multifaceted. Therefore, it should not be stereotyped. It can be found in any temperament, whether a person is shy or extroverted, perfectionistic or laid back. He or she can show anger in many ways. We use the term anger to describe a number of expressions: frustration, irritability, annoyance, blowing off steam, fretting. It is important to realize how each of these reactions is tied to anger. For instance, Tom, was not a screamer. Neither did he slam doors or curse when he became angry. Instead, he showed his struggle with angry emotions by withdrawing in self-pity and engaging often in critical thoughts. But Tom did not recognize these responses as expressions of anger. His former wife, on the other hand, rarely hid her feelings. She was capable of flying into loud, boisterous rages that rattled the windows. No one had to guess if she felt angry. Noting this variation, Dr. Carter helped Tom to see that the first step towards recovering from anger-related problems is identifying its various manifestations and recognizing its many faces. The following inventory can help you in this process too. Check the statements that apply to you. Impatience comes over me more frequently than I would like. I nurture critical thoughts quite easily. When I am displeased with someone, I may shut down any communication or withdrawal. I feel inwardly annoyed when family and friends do not comprehend my needs. Tension mounts within me as I tackle a demanding task. I feel frustrated when I see someone else having fewer struggles than I do. When facing an important event, I may obsessively ponder how I must manage it. Sometimes I walk in another direction to avoid seeing someone I do not like. When discussing a controversial topic, my tone of voice is likely to become persuasive. I can accept a person who admits his or her mistakes, but I have a hard time accepting someone who refuses to admit his or her own weaknesses. When I talk about my irritations, I don't really want to hear an opposite point of view. I do not easily forget when someone does me wrong. When someone confronts me from a misinformed position, I am thinking of my rebuttal as he or she speaks. Sometimes my discouragement makes me want to quit. I can be quite aggressive in my business pursuits or even when playing a game just for fun. I struggle emotionally with the things in life that are not fair. Although I know it may not be right, I sometimes blame others for my problems. When someone openly speaks ill of me, my natural response is to think of how I can defend myself. Sometimes I speak slanderously about a person, not really caring how it may harm his or her reputation. I may act kindly on the outside while feeling frustrated on the inside. Sarcasm is a trait I use in expressing humor. When someone is clearly annoyed with me, I too easily jump into the conflict. At times, I struggle with moods of depression or discouragement. I've been known to take an I don't care attitude toward the needs of others. When I am in an authority role, I may speak too sternly or insensitively. Everyone will recognize some of these characteristics. If you checked 10 items, your anger is probably more constant than you might like. If you checked 15 or more, you can probably recount many disappointments and irritations. This indicates you are vulnerable to the extreme ill effects of anger, rage, and explosions, or to guilt, bitterness, and resentment. But don't give up. Anger can be managed if you can apply an awakened mind to it. If you're interested in gaining a broader perspective of yourself, ask a close friend or family member to complete the inventory, answering the questions as he or she thinks you would respond. You will notice from the items in the inventory that anger can be expressed in a wide array of behaviors. What expressions seem to be the most common forms of your anger? You may show your anger in ways other than those mentioned in the inventory. It's good to discover such hidden expressions of anger. It implies self-awareness. During their sessions together, Tom repeatedly told Dr. Carter how he would slowly stew over daily irritants. He admitted that people, especially family members, had learned to stay out of his way when he was in one of his moods. Dr. Carter pointed out that this was a definite communication of anger that ultimately had contributed to the demise of Tom's marriage. "Maybe I was just trying to kid myself," Tom admitted, "but I had always felt proud of being the one in our marriage who didn't have an anger problem. My wife was so vocal with her anger that I assumed my more civilized mannerisms were proof that my anger was under control." Dr. Carter nodded. "In a sense, your anger was under control, at least to the extent that you were not a rageaholic. But in another sense, it was still out of control because your personality was turning toward discouragement and your life was increasingly filled with poor relationships." Defining your anger. Have you ever attempted to work on a car engine? If so, you know it can be an overwhelming task. And if you do not understand the engine's design or intricacies, once you learn the function of each component, though, what at first seemed perplexing can be quite possible. That's the way it is with anger. When we first attempt to grasp its meaning, the task of mastering it can seem impossible. But as we come to know and understand our anger, its management is far less daunting. In one of his early sessions with Dr. Carter, Tom admitted, "I'm realizing that I've experienced anger in some form in my entire life, but I must confess that I never gave 2 minutes of thought about its meaning until I faced the repercussions of my divorce, and frankly, I'm still not sure of the purpose of my anger." Let's explore that, responded Dr. Carter. First, notice when you do not feel angry, when you feel affirmed or understood or accepted or bonded. At those times, you feel everything but anger. Your inner self says, all is well. You're exactly right. My anger occurs primarily when I'm ignored or mistreated, so I guess you can say it's part of my defense system. Let's call it your emotional self-preservation, said Dr. Carter. Anger comes when you feel the need to clearly communicate that your personal boundaries have been violated. Anger can be felt even when others don't see it. Anger is defined as an intent to preserve 1. Your personal worth, 2. Essential needs, and 3. Basic convictions. Hi there, I'm Vincent Hedges, and this is episode 3 of The Emotional Revolution of Modern Man. I was reading an excerpt from a book I have called The Anger Workbook, written by Les Carter, PhD, and Frank Minirth, MD. I was given this book, I believe, for my birthday or maybe Father's Day, from my wife, and it was a really great book. I don't even think it's a workbook. There's fill in the lines, and I'm sure you can find it online. There is a little bit of a Christian underlying message there, but it's not heavy on the religion. It's just a few references to the Bible. And when my wife gave this to me, I was very happy to get it because I had been struggling with anger. I still struggle with anger, but I had some explosions that was really upsetting to me. And it's funny when people get you self-help stuff, it's kind of like when someone gets you a lot of things to make you smell nice. You get, maybe you get some cologne and then also in the bag there's a stick of deodorant and then there's like some toothpaste and you're like, Jesus, like, do I smell? So definitely when, you're getting these self-help books from people as gifts, it can be a little unsettling, I guess. But for me, I was ready to receive it. And although I didn't finish the entire book, I read through a lot of it and I did a lot of the work. And I'll be honest, just reading that was the first chapter, not even all of it. And it just brought up a lot of stuff for me. And even just reading it now, and I sort of skimmed it before I started this podcast, but one of the ones was the sarcasm one. Do you use sarcasm as humor? And, I got to say, I try to be a bit goofy and fun, and I really do use sarcasm here and there. What are some other ones for me? I do get impatient. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my wife and 2 kids, and we're in isolation quarantine. A lot of this stuff is it's kind of like a pressure cooker for anything that, that maybe we haven't dealt with. And another big one that came up for me was I can accept a person who admits his or her mistakes. Oh yeah, graciously. Oh, it's okay. But I have a hard time accepting someone who refuses to admit his or her own weaknesses. I'll tell you, like in the last couple of weeks, I had a big falling out with my mom, which we reconciled, but it was all over me getting frustrated at her because I wanted her to see things the way I saw them, the way I thought was right, and that came up for me. So I think this is a bit to chew on here. And I really like the part about comparing it to something like a car or anything that you don't understand at the beginning. And it seems like impossible. Like maybe some of you guys out there are thinking, man, I've been this way since I was a teenager. I'm a man. And maybe you've done that thing. I'm a man, take it or leave it. This is how I am. And that is something that, has been given to us as kids, as young boys. Boys will be boys, and we allow negative behavior that hurts other people to happen in our lives, and chalk it up to our nature. It's our nature. But my argument in this podcast is it's not nature, it's nurture, and we've been nurtured and taught to think and behave a certain way, and that way, in a lot of cases, just doesn't work in trying to have positive relationships, and to find happiness in your life and to feel understood. I definitely know that recognizing what your needs are, moving from that to how to express what your needs are without it being a giant chip on your shoulder about it. But it's hard to express your needs because that's a sign of weakness. And, often we aren't, we're not very comfortable expressing our weaknesses, most guys. And it's become part of the self-preservation. And I think I like that part too, where you go into their conversation he's having with the doctor, and the doctor is saying, what did he call it? He called it your let's see. Just talking about it being a preservation of what's inside and a preservation of your safety. And I think, that's definitely at the root of a lot of it, because when you grow up in the boy code, there's no preservation there of your safety. You're kind of, you're out there and you're ready to fight or flight. You're ready to stand up for yourself or sidle up to somebody else who is the alpha in that situation, and give in to what they're saying, what's going on. Maybe you like the kid that everybody's making fun of, but because the big kids are making fun of him and he's now the target, you're not about to stand up for him. You're going to stand next to the guys who are making fun of him, and maybe you won't throw in your own comment, but you certainly aren't jumping up to his defense. That guy, it's kind of like your inner child. Your inner child is the guy who's been polarized since you were a boy, and he was never really let to be a child. Almost from the beginning, he was told to man up, to be bigger than he was. So we started pretending right from our first days of school, maybe even right from our first, few years at home before school, and we learned to pretend. And then that pretending can kind of take us into the next part of our life, which is our relationships with our spouses and our children, pretending the whole time. And I'm talking about this, and I don't know if you've heard the other two episodes, but I'm definitely coming from a place where I'm dealing with this stuff right now. I'm still struggling with my anger. I'm still struggling with expressing my needs before I get angry. And that's going to be a path I'm on for maybe a lot of my life, because reprogramming yourself isn't something that just happens, overnight. In fact, it may be the kind of thing where you kind of always, if you got a bad leg, let's say, you hurt your leg, you got an injury or whatever, you may get it back to almost full function. But if you stop doing those stretches and stop getting it sort of primed to do what it needs to do, it may still cause you pain. It may always cause you pain and cause it to not function the way you want it to. So, exercising your emotional vocabulary, exercising your emotional perception as to what's going on inside, and not just glossing it over with sports or booze or work or whatever it is, but taking time to sit down and assess, taking time to ask the people closest to you what their experience is with you as a man, and how it feels to experience you as a father, as a husband, as a son, as a brother. They're scary questions to ask, but how do we see who we are if we don't courageously ask the people around us to tell us what they are experiencing? I want to read you a little excerpt from a book that really put me on a really great path. It's called The Four Agreements. I picked this book up about 10 years ago. Haven't revisited it too many times. But in this book, he's talking, he talks a lot about, it's by Don Miguel Ruiz, a Toltec wisdom book. And many of you a lot of you out there probably heard of it. But he's just talking again about how we learn as children and how this stuff happens to us to program us. From page 5, that's how we learn as children. Children believe everything adults say. We agree with them, and our faith is so strong that the belief system controls our whole dream of life. We didn't choose these beliefs, and we may have rebelled against them, but we were not strong enough to win the rebellion. The result is surrender to the beliefs with our agreement. I call this process the domestication of humans, and through this domestication, we learn how to live and how to dream. In human domestication, the information from the outside dream is conveyed to the inside dream, creating our whole belief system. First, the child is taught to name the names of things, mom, dad, milk, bottle. Day by day, at home, at school, at church, and from television, we are told how to live and what kind of behavior is acceptable. The outside dream teaches us how to be human. We have a whole concept of what a woman is and what a man is, and we also learn to judge. We judge ourselves, we judge other people, we judge the neighbors. Children are domesticated the same way we domesticate a dog or a cat or any other animal. In order to teach a dog, we punish the dog and we give it rewards. We train our children, whom we love so much, the same way that we train any domesticated animal, with a system of punishment and reward. We are told, you are a good boy, or you are a good girl, and when we do what mom and dad want us to. When we don't, we are a bad girl or a bad boy. When we went against the rules, we were punished, and when we went along with the rules, we got a reward. We were punished many times a day, and we were also rewarded many times a day. Soon we became afraid of being punished and also afraid of not receiving the reward. The reward is the attention that we got from our parents or from other people like siblings, teachers, and friends. We soon develop a need to hook other people's attention in order to get the reward. The reward feels good, and we keep doing that. We keep doing what others want us to do in order to get the reward. With that fear of being punished and that fear of not getting the reward, we start pretending to be what we are not, just to please others, just to be good enough for someone else. We try to please mom and dad, we try to please the teachers at school, we try to please the church, and so we start acting. We pretend to be what we are not because we are afraid of being rejected. The fear of being rejected becomes the fear of not being good enough. Eventually we become someone that we are not. We become a copy of mama's beliefs, daddy's beliefs, society's beliefs, and religion's beliefs. All of our normal tendencies are lost in the process of domestication, and when we are old enough for our mind to understand, we learn the word no. The adults say, don't do this and don't do that, and we rebel and say no. We rebel because we are defending our freedom. We want to be ourselves, but we are very little, and the adults are big and strong. After a certain time, we are afraid because we know that every time we do something wrong, we are going to be punished. The domestication is so strong that at a certain point in our lives, we no longer need anyone to domesticate us. We don't need mom or dad or the school or the church to domesticate us. We are so well trained that we are our own domesticator. We are auto-domesticated. We are an auto-domesticated animal. We can now domesticate ourselves according to the same belief system we were given and using the same system of punishment and reward. We punish ourselves when we don't follow the rules according to our belief system. We reward ourselves when we are the good boy or the good girl. The belief system is like a book of law that rules our mind. Without question, whatever is in that book of law is our truth. We base all of our judgments according to that book of law. Even these judgments go against our own inner nature. Even moral laws like the 10 Commandments are programmed into our minds in the process of domestication. One by one, all these agreements go into the book of law, and these agreements rule our dream. Now, I read that little bit there, guys, because I just wanted to encourage you that the way we're programmed isn't the way it has to be. And it does take some work to reprogram. It takes reparenting your inner child and the adult. Needs to be able to recognize that the safety of the inner child is in danger and that he is worth protecting. And I also like that passage because it talks about a little bit, it points a finger anyways towards a moral compass. You know, we follow these rules, these laws, even when they don't feel right. Maybe some of you guys out there are physical with your kids. Maybe you spank them. Maybe you just grab them and pull them around and push them around. Because maybe you feel that your kids are hard-headed and they just don't listen any other way. I've heard that. Maybe you're someone who is verbally strong and intimidating. And maybe you're someone who's dissociative, who just closes up and is kind of like a dark cloud for most of the day, or for the time that you decide to be angry. All of these are defense mechanisms. All of these are ways to deal with vulnerability and our needs not being met, in my opinion, and from what I've been reading. And I guess just what I'd like to put to you guys is that we do these things because, we're trying to be a good dad. And if our dad was a certain way with us, even if we feel a little screwed up, we still feel like our dad did it the right way. Like, well, my dad hit me and I turned out okay. Look at me. My dad yelled at me all the time. I probably would have dropped out of school if my dad didn't kick my ass on a daily basis. There's just this kind of thinking that happens. And I can appreciate that, in a world where we don't have a ton of direction, unless we actually seek it out and look for it, it's assumed that we just kind of are going to do what our parents did and it's going to turn out great. But you know what? Our parents were the children of people who had to go to war and who lived in totally different conditions than we did and had way less social development and mental health development in research. They are not, in my opinion, most parents from that generation may not, and our kids may say the same about us. We're not necessarily in a position of the highest mental health and to create the safest environment for children to be raised with, good mental health. So what I'm trying to pose here in a very roundabout way is that we as men need to listen to that moral compass. And even if it was the way we were raised, consider the effect it may have had on you, and also consider the effect that you're having on other people. And maybe we can ask ourselves these actions, what is the purpose and what are they achieving? Are they achieving what I want? And really, what is it that you do want? I mean, what do you want from your relationships with your kids? Do you want to feel that they respect you to the point of fear? Do you want to feel that there's a little bit of room there for maybe for them to talk back a little without, incredible punishment? Figure out. I think it's really important for us to figure out what our needs are, and what is the most effective way to tell the people in our family what we need. And I think even more importantly than that, and maybe more concisive than that, is being able to tell ourselves what we need and recognize it. And you know what? It might not be all the ways that we think we need to relax and unwind. Maybe we think that having a few beers is our way to relax and unwind. But does that kind of make it harder to stay calm, to stay relaxed the next day? Is it more of a weight on our emotions? Do we want our wives to be, not contrary to us? Do we want, just a yes partner who just says yes to everything that we say and doesn't give us any kind of constructive criticism? Or do we want a relationship where, we can be mirrors to one another of who we are, so we can have a better understanding and of course, move from that understanding to change and hopefully change for the better, so that we can teach our children to even raise the vibration of our planet even higher. So these are the challenges and the questions that I'm posing to you, men. And I want to just say thank you so much for tuning in to this third episode. I'm going to try to keep them close to half an hour. Some may be shorter, some may be longer. But if you have any input to this conversation, please feel free to put it in the comment section or just send me an email. You can email me at vincentghedges@gmail.com. And yeah, I'd really like to keep this conversation going. I'd really like to know what some of you guys might be struggling with in your isolation, in your quarantine. It's a whole other episode, where we could talk about what the isolation is doing to us, how our families are coping. I'm dealing with a lot of stuff. I'm in my oldest son is with my ex-wife, and my two young ones are here with me, and it's creating a real. I'm very torn and sad, missing my son, and it kind of exacerbates any other thing that might be going on, stress-wise. And sometimes I think I'm like just dealing with it fine, and then other times it's coming out in ways that I'm not proud of, and maybe some that are, because sometimes I cry about it, and I think that helps. Anyways, just opening the floor, guys, trying to be informal. Again, the two books that I read from today was The Anger Workbook by Les Carter, PhD, and Frank Minerth, MD. And that's a workbook, and I'm sure you can find that online. And then the other one I read was The Four Agreements, Toltec Wisdom Book by Don Miguel Ruiz. Also, it says A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. A very motivating and uplifting book. So this is it. In my meditations, in my prayers, I've been just feeling like this is what I should be doing right now. Continuing this podcast and reaching out to you guys. And I just want to say, I feel great love for my fellow man and my fellow men. It's something that I've had since I was young, that I cared about guys and the way we've been treated. And I feel like I've seen the injustice in our lives from a very young age. And I just want to say to you guys that I appreciate that we have been dealing with so much and have still achieved a lot of great things, and a lot of love and compassion from our generation is here. And I really want to keep contributing to the social consciousness of men in our world, so that we can create an even better world for our children, for our sons and daughters, and hopefully one that's almost unrecognizable from the one our parents came from. Anyways, with love, this is Vincent Hedges signing off, and inviting you to come back for episode 4, which I hope to be doing on Friday. All right, have a great one, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.